like Diana was saying, we are doing a live about how to build the perfect relationship for people that are super busy. Maybe they're crushing it in their business. Maybe they're just running, or they're the CEO of their company and they just have absolutely no time, but they really do want that love in their life and that companionship, you know? And so Deanna does a great job at helping those people out and bringing them to the love that they want, and really kind of like working through some of the things that I think we all kind of need to work to get to that person or find that person, or either like just attract that person to you by being the person you are. So just like, how did this even start? You know, like, I feel like it's such an interesting niche to be in, and like such an interesting thing to do. So like, was it just one day you were like, oh my gosh, I definitely want to help people with relationships, or what was that process?
Sure. So it's like a multi-layered answer.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it started when I was really young. I had a lot of trauma growing up. And I think the one thing that was stable for me was my relationship with, or my parents' relationship with each other. It was pretty amazing. And so I think I realized pretty early on how rare it actually was. And as exciting as it was also pretty depressing to see how many people don't have a relationship like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was definitely one piece of it. I saved a girl's life when I was really young from suicide. And I think that also instilled a great piece into me of wanting to do something to help other people. And I've always wanted to have my own business. My friends nicknamed me the therapist growing up. I think it was like a lot of different pieces of my life that kind of all geared me towards doing what I do. So I went to undergrad for psychology and grad school for psychotherapy. And when I passed my licensing exam, I started just interviewing a bunch of really cool and interesting people about their dating and relationship life. And I realized how much I actually really loved it. And I started working with men, actually helping like really good guys get a shot, you know, with women. And then it kind of grew from there. Women were like, hey, like, help us, you know, and then couples were like, hey, help us. And so I've been doing this for about 6 years. So it kind of just, you know, organically grew from there. And I've been doing this for years now. I love it. Most of what I do is like one-on-one private coaching, but I'm also going into doing like live events now, and you know, more media and group programs and things like that. So that's a short answer, but there's a super long.
So when it comes to like how you're helping them within dating, like, what are some things that usually come up that a lot of people go through? They're like, they don't even realize that this is really what's happening to them. You know how like sometimes it's what you don't know, which is what is happening. Like, what are some things that really commonly come up for people?
So a lot of things that come up are dating the wrong people. A lot of it is not living a high quality life themselves, but wanting someone who is high quality, which
Yeah.
feels a little bit out of alignment. I was actually just talking to someone about being in a wrong relationship. It's not seeing red flags that are like very, very clear and they're there, but we ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are just not having high quality relationships right now, and it's obviously a huge problem. And so people like me come in and help. The whole dating process is getting more and more difficult, where there's so many more ways that we can connect with people, but we also kind of feel more disconnected than we ever have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like, it feels really,
Yeah.
should be so much easier. Before internet dating, it was like kind of hard to find people.
Mm-hmm.
So we have access to people, but it's just not happening. People are not meeting as easily as they once could, and it is like that swipe thing. It's on a quick, just like decision making, and people, I think, more than ever are super busy.
Yeah.
There's a self-confidence issue that's happening there. I mean, there's so many sort of mistakes and problems that are happening right now. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. So
With that, okay, so like you mentioned online dating, like what's your opinion of online dating? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like both of my parents got married from people that they met online. And
sure.
I tried an online relationship before. It wasn't really like, it wasn't terrible. I thought it was kind of cool. I swayed away. I haven't used online dating for a really long time. But like, what do you think about online dating? Is it good? If you're looking for a relationship, would you recommend that for people?
So I met my fiance that way, so I can't say it's
Oh.
bad. I'd be a little hypocritical if I said that. And I've, you know, dated other people from there as well. I think it's sort of what you make of it. It's just like any other avenue. I don't think for most people that it's smart to just do that, because I
Mhm.
think for a lot of people they get kind of, I don't say lazy because that's not a nice word to use,
Yeah.
but it's basically where you're looking at just one way to meet someone, where I think you should actually look in several ways to meet people. So I think it's just one nice avenue, especially when you're a super busy person,
Yeah.
where you can kind of look at your messages whenever you can. It's not, you have to be somewhere at a specific time, but I think it's also I find that because a lot of people are spending so much time online, they're actually like don't have social skills. And like
Oh, all right.
do not know how to approach, like do not know how to actually speak to someone in like a social way anymore. So I think a lot of it's like hiding behind a computer. So I find that people really need to start actually branching out and not just relying on online dating, but it is a really nice, tool to use. But I also find a lot of people, while they do meet that way, I find a lot of people don't meet that way, where they're just the follow through is kind of crappy. And I think just because there's so many, there's sort of so much competition. There's so many other people. Exactly. It's kind of like a catalog. It's going to be really hard to just nail that like one person down and sort of have that follow through and actually meet someone. So again, I look at it as kind of like, yes, it's a good tool, but it shouldn't be the only one that you use, is my thought on that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, okay, so another part of what you had said like previously before that also was like, I feel like we all kind of deal with this, is like where you see a lot of red flags, but then like you don't want to give it up, or like, how do you even know if that's a real flag? Like, how are you supposed to say like, oh, flag, or maybe I'm just being too judgmental, and like, what is a serious red flag? Like, what's the thing where it's like, okay, if this is happening, you shouldn't be in it. And like, how do you leave that and be the stronger person to be like, you're right, I shouldn't keep doing this person, even though I like doing them, I probably shouldn't do that.
Sure. So a lot of it is holding yourself accountable to what it is you're looking for. And if something doesn't sound quite right, you got to look into it. And again, it is that kind of space between having sort of that high quality and having those standards, but then also looking at it as like, well, yeah, but I also have to look at, the whole idea of other people, like the standards being too high and having like no one, the expectations being so high that no one can meet that standard. So it really needs to be that in between. But basically every single person I've ever known has been in a relationship, whether it be months or years, would say that from the beginning they knew something wasn't right. They just ignored it. So a lot of times it's looking at what those red flags are, and it doesn't mean that the person's not for you. It just means that like, okay, this is kind of, they're bad and ugly, right? We all have our good, bad, and ugly. So this is some of their bad, this is some of their ugly. Can I handle this? Assuming it never changes, nothing, it's going to be exactly the way it is right now. Assuming that's the case, can I handle that? So, that's really the question. Again, I was just on the phone with my friend earlier who was in a relationship for a year. And it's exactly what he said, where it's like the red flags were all there. I just ignored them. So you look at, what is this person showing me? What is going on here? What's happening? And am I okay with this or not? And there's no judgment. Like, it either does or doesn't work for you, but you have to assume that it's never going to change. It's going to be exactly the way it is. And, it's really a personal decision, in terms of what does and doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I feel like understanding yourself is a huge part when it comes to like going into a relationship, and thinking about yourself second. It sounds like kind of weird, but like, I know that when we go into relationships, a lot of times like we want something from it, but then ultimately I feel like that kind of hurts us when it comes to that, because we're just looking for something they're supposed to give us, and then we don't feel like satisfied if they don't give it to us. Like, what do you see that often in other people, and like, how do you kind of help people get out of that and more towards like the loving, giving relationship that they want?
So for a lot of people, it's, finding what they're actually looking for is incredibly important. And it's also really difficult. I think a lot of people think like, oh yeah, it's super easy. Like, I know exactly what I'm looking for. But then when I ask them, they're like, I'm not really sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, getting really clear on what it is that you're looking for and following through on that and holding yourself accountable to that. So like, one thing that I could recommend people doing is writing a list of what they look for in someone and what they don't look for, and holding yourself accountable to that list.
That's so
do you know what I mean? And like holding yourself to that and getting very clear on who it is that you're looking for and what it is you're looking for, and making sure that that's what you're sticking to. And if it's something that feels a little bit different, where it's not exactly what it is that you're looking for, what you think you're looking for, at that point, then you need to look at, is this still okay with me though, or not?
Yeah.
Because, obviously certain confine, like people will have certain characteristics, but people are going to float away from some of that, obviously too, just to fill them out as like an actual human being. And so you look at those qualities and say, is this something that I, want to be around and can handle or not?
Yeah.
Hi, Terry.
Hi,
you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, 100%. When it comes to like a list though, is there any way that people like that are searching for that person, or Maybe they're even in a relationship and they're just trying to understand, like, is this right? Like, is this the good person for me to be with? Because that was actually a question somebody kind of asked, was like, who is the right person? Or is it like, should you, like, who to have it with, right? Like, that was one of the questions, was like, who should I have it with? So, like, say somebody's like looking for like who they're supposed to have this relationship with. Or is there any questions to like ask them that you would recommend to say, like, okay, if you're just like going out there not looking for anything, like, here's a little bit of structure, here's a couple of questions you should ask yourself before you even like think about dating?
So, you mean before you're actually dating someone?
Yeah, or
So you've
say
already
like you're
met
in
the
a relation. Yeah, or say you're in a relationship. Like, either if you're in a relationship and you don't feel happy, or if you're single and you're looking for somebody, like, are there a couple of questions like somebody should just like check in with themselves and ask themselves?
So, really based on what it is that you're looking for. So, depending on what it is that you're looking for, you get really clear on that. So, if, just to be, thanks, Tim.
Ah.
So, just to be really clear on, what it is that you're looking for, but also have that sort of divide between being very clear, but then also being very open about what you're looking for. Does that make sense? And,
100%.
about when you're in a relationship, let's say, right? And when you're in a relationship, it's the case of, is this making me happy? And also, but also sharing what it is that you want. You can't be mad at someone for not giving you what you want if you're not telling them what it is that you want. But I think a lot of people don't know exactly what it is that they want, which is exactly what we're talking about. If you can't be
Yeah.
happy on your own and fulfilling yourself, how are you going to have someone else help do that for you as well? Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I think for a lot of it, it's about
So
getting
much.
clear about who you are. And the whole idea too is, being high quality, but finding high quality. And the great
Hmm.
question to ask yourself is, would you date you? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So it's like, if you're looking for someone
So
who's high
weird.
quality, but you can't stand doing the work in your own life, how are you going to, right? It's so
Yeah.
out of alignment. But isn't that a great question, though? I mean, at one point in
That's
my
so
life, when I
good.
was like not in a good place, like I had, no, I would never want to date myself, not at this.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of work to do where I felt prideful about someone being in my life. So if I'm looking for, let's say, 6 or 7 things in my life from someone, but I'm not doing it in my own life, how does that make any sense? So let's say I'm looking for someone, who has a great career. Do I have a great career? Someone who's healthy. Am I healthy? Someone who loves themselves. Do I love myself? Someone who has great friends around them. Do I have great friends in my life? And for a lot of people, you wouldn't say yes. And that's okay. Like, you don't panic, but
Yeah.
then you have to start looking at what those areas are and what you need to do to change it to make, you feel different and better about answering that question, and then put yourself out there. So a lot of people don't do the work and either expect someone else to do it for them, or they
Hmm.
end up with someone who's just not as good for them that way because of that fact.
Interesting. I feel like that was like such an eye opener.
Oh
Everybody
no,
is like,
are you frozen? Back?
oh, I can still see you. Everything's fine. Can you see me still?
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep, yeah,
I
you were
was just
frozen
saying,
for a
like, I
second.
totally
I couldn't hear you.
agree. Like, I think that that question is just so important to ask yourself and like think about it from that perspective. Because yeah, like, you attract like who you are, kind of thing. Which actually brings me to another question. Somebody asked something like, hey, let's see if I can get this. Like, Bayo Adio asked, is it better to be opposites or be alike? Like, is everything, if everything else is consistent? So would you agree, like, opposites attract, or kind of just something that people used to say and it's like excuses people from seeing red flags, and so they're like, oh, it's just because we're opposites. They
So when it comes to like morals and beliefs and for the future, things for the future, you definitely want to be in sync and in line, right? So let's say I didn't want to have kids and you did want to have kids, we probably shouldn't be together,
yeah.
right? So when it comes to, outlook and perspective and vision on life and how we want to live our lives, those kind of things, we should definitely be very similar and in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Daniel. But if not, like, in that perspective, you definitely want to. When it comes to where you're different, because you don't want to be dating yourself, right? So you do want to have people who there's some differences attached to it. But in that
Yeah.
case, you want it to be like things like hobbies. You also want to be with someone who makes up for what you lack. That's incredibly important, where you kind of balance each other out. So for example, with
Yeah.
me and my fiance, I tend to be kind of like quirky and silly, and like I have a ton of energy, and he tends to be like, you know, very calm and even keel. And so he kind of gives me like a little bit of a boost, and I kind of like, you know, he kind of like calms me down a little bit. So it's really nice
Yeah.
because we're able to kind of balance each other out that way. So again, when you look at kind of your perspective, things that are super important in your life, you want to be very similar. When it comes to other parts of your life, being a little bit different and kind of being able to bring a different perspective to things can kind of be fun and different.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like 100% agree with that. Where, you know, where one spot in your life you're kind of lacking, and the other spot they kind of bring it up. Like, just like what you're saying in your relationship, like my relationship is, my boyfriend's like kind of more chill. Like, he's more relaxed. He doesn't really like to talk very loud or anything. And he's also really, really private. But then I'm like the outgoing, like kind of a little bit weird. We kind of come together in that way where it's like, yes, we're very different, but then we also make up, like, where I'm really messy, he's really structured, and it helps each other. So it's interesting that you said that, because I was like, dude, that totally reminded me of that relationship as well. So when it came to meeting him, so like, okay, I want to kind of go meeting him.
Yeah, and frankly,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Go ahead.
someone who is also too similar to you, um, they also not only will bring out your good parts, which is good, they'll also bring out your bad points, which is not good. You know what I'm saying? It'll sort of like exacerbate your
Mm-hmm.
bad qualities. So someone who has some differences in you, almost looking at for someone who has some of the things that you either want to have or wish you had, is kind of really nice too, because you end up kind of taking some of those pieces, you know what I mean, from them, that you want to
Yeah.
instill in yourself. And that's where it's really nice to be similar in certain ways, but then different in other ways. Where again, someone
Mm-hmm.
who's too similar, it's like you don't grow together that way though. So you want to be with someone who has
Yeah.
some differences you, and you know, can challenge you a little bit, can show you and open up yourself to like certain things, is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely good to have that balance where it's like you're not too similar, you're not too different, but that the things that are super important to you that are like a non, you know, negotiable, you're both very
Mm-hmm.
clear on, very upfront about.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I was gonna go into online dating, but that just like brought up a question. So, if you don't mind, I kind of wanted to like ask like personal questions. So, how long have you been with your fiance now? And then like, would you say that there's
Absolutely.
people that should wait like a certain amount of time before you get married, or like what is your opinion when it comes to that? Because I know some people that have just gotten married like after 2 months and they've been together for 60 years, and then some people are like, you have to be dating somebody for 5 years before anything. Like, what's your opinion? Is it like, you know kind of thing, or is it something that you're like, you probably should wait a couple of years before you like hitch and get it together and everything?
So we've been together a little over 2 years to answer your first question. We're getting
Hmm.
married in a few months. And in terms of timing, I mean, it really depends on the person. I don't want to say that there's a particular time that really, you know, should work for anyone, but I do know that you should be with someone long enough to really know what you're putting yourself into. And oftentimes people are not always so forward up front to kind of share. They're like,
Hmm.
you know, we're talking about the good, bad, and the ugly. The bad and the ugly part doesn't always come up right away. And because that's the case, you
Yeah.
want to actually spend some time with the person. Like, you want to know what they, you know, how they deal with like a stressful situation. You want to know, you know, what fighting with them is like. You want to know what, in
Yeah.
my opinion, living with them is like. So I always suggest living with someone, or a lot of people say don't do that. For me, I find that really important because you really see if you can do life with this person. You're with them every single day. You wake up
Hmm.
with them, you go to sleep next to them. You realize quirks and habits and things about them that you never would have known otherwise. Even if you spend like 3 or 4 nights or something, you know, like that, together each week, you also don't see everything, and you don't really know what
Yeah.
life is like consistently every day. Like, to know
Right.
that this is what marriage looks like with this person, and this is what it's like. You know, does that work for me? Does it not work for me? And it gives you time to kind of work out those kinks. Do you
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? It's the idea of like, you know, can we work out? Does this work? Does this make sense? You know, do we fight fairly? You know, can we get
Yeah.
through difficult times? To really to be long enough where it feels like you really know this person, you know their
Hmm.
bad points, and you're okay with it, and you're willing to make that long-term commitment with that person. So again, it's really about taking that time to see basically every angle of them, assuming it's never going to change, and being okay with the fact that it is how it is, and make that decision from there, whether that's someone that you'd want to be with long term. But it kind of is like a marriage. I mean, there's no difference between that and a title. So living together, first, and kind of really getting a good sense of them is in my opinion, go.
Yeah, no, and I actually like
not
super
making a
support
mistake, and really knowing what you're getting yourself into.
100%. Like I really agree with your opinion. I feel like living together and kind of like getting to know all of the quirks is like essential, because sometimes like, I mean, I did have a friend once who was, with somebody for, I think they were with each other for 3 years. They never moved in together. And then once they moved in, she realized like he was just not really meant for her. Like she couldn't spend all that time with him because she just didn't like him anymore. It was just like everything was dead. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that like I spent this whole entire time like seeing him only like here and there. And then like finally when I spent like all of my time with him, like he was really protective and like wouldn't let her go out, and like all of these weird like little quirks that she just didn't know that he really had until she literally was like, every single night, this is where I'm going to be, kind of thing, So it was really interesting. I 100% agree with you. Yeah. So then you were mentioning arguments. Like, how often should a couple, like if somebody's arguing like every single day, like is that terrible? Do some couples argue every day? Like how often is like arguing okay? And like what do you think about arguments, or how do you just overcome, like what if a couple's having a hard time and like one person fights differently? Like what things do you recommend for people like that? Because I feel like some people fight a lot, but that's just who they are.
Sure. So there's a difference between fighting and arguing. Fighting is to win, and fighting is hurtful. And that's not what arguing actually is supposed to be. And again, there's a difference between fighting and arguing. Arguing makes sense. It just means that you and I don't necessarily agree on something, and we're trying to share, my point, and then you're trying to share your point, and we kind of meet in the middle and come up with some sort of compromise. So it's totally healthy and good to argue. It's not good to, again, start ripping each other's heads off and cursing at each other, screaming, and, having it be volatile. Like that's not what we want to have happen. That shouldn't have to get to that point to share your thought, your point, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? So there's a way to do it in a healthy manner where you're able to share, your expectations, your thoughts, your decision making, they share theirs, and then hopefully again you kind of meet in the middle. There's some sort of compromise that needs to happen, and there's give and take, and there's sort of times where you do want to put your dukes up and kind of say like, no, this is how I feel, this is important, and I'm not going to move on that. And there's other times where you really need to just kind of give in and acquiesce and allow the other person to get their point across and to go their way, if that makes sense. So you don't want to be in that drag out fight, and you don't want to be fighting every day either. Like that doesn't make sense. There's nothing healthy about that. So every once in a while, of course, it's going to happen, especially with someone, it's going to happen more. But you want to get to the point where it feels healthy, not where it feels like you're trashing each other and kind of bringing each other down to sort of get your point across or to get your way. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you out there. I like 100% agree. It's like, I really think that that's a really healthy way of thinking about it. Like arguing is healthy because you guys are talking and trying to understand each other's opinions, and like, it's not a battle of I'm trying to say like my opinion's better than yours. It's more just like this is a little bit different. Like, can you see my perspective? I can totally see yours, but like, it's just different, and stuff like that. So I like that you really summarize it in that way, because I feel like that's actually just eye-opening for a lot of people to even hear something like that, I feel like jealousy happens a lot when it comes to like a relationship. What do you think about jealousy, or if you have a partner that's super jealous, or what if like you're super jealous, like how do you deal with those things? And what's something you should be jealous about? What's something that you're like, dude, just let it go?
So it really depends on what it is. So for a lot of people, they become jealous of other people, like friends that are the same sex, or someone where they feel kind of threatened by something, but it's really your security that you have to deal with. Like there's a reason why you feel that way, and it typically will come from you and has nothing to do with your partner at all. And you end up kind of creating stories in your head about things that don't actually exist. So let's say, for example, you and I are in a relationship and you're going out with some of your girlfriends one night and you said you'd be home by 10 and it's like 10:02. For some people, it's just like, oh, like no big deal. For other people, it's like, you know, where is she? Like, where's Rachel? Like, what is she doing? Like, she's just going home at 10, like sleeping with someone. Like, you know, you end up starting like creating a story that's like not true at all. So that comes from trust issues. It comes from self-confidence. It really comes from something relating to you. A healthy relationship doesn't have jealousy. Do you know what I'm saying? If there's something that's not right about the relationship for something like that to happen.
So a healthy relationship, like you would say a healthy relationship has zero jealousy in it.
Pretty much. I mean,
No way.
you know, like,
that's cool.
yeah, like when I about my own relationship, you know, and forget even just like, you know, from an educational like perspective, when I look at my own relationship, I'm not jealous about anything. You know what I mean? Like when he hangs out with his friends, you know, his girlfriends, when he goes to work, like, because I just trust him 100%. I don't think I've ever been jealous of anything he's ever done. So I'm not gonna say, you know, it never exists for anyone, but I mean, it should be very, very minimal if it ever exists, because it means something's going on. Like there's a trust issue happening there. Something doesn't feel right. Like something isn't adding up.
Yeah.
So if there's any kind of jealousy happening, it means like something isn't going quite right, and you really need to look into doing, like, you need to talk about that, because I don't have any in my relationship. So
Interesting. That's so cool.
do you in your own relationship?
There's probably like a little jealousy, and like half of it, like you said, I know is just me like making stuff up here and there. And then I feel like in every time when you feel jealous, like you of course want to blame them for it, you know? You're like, you did it, you made me jealous. And so yeah, like I've definitely had jealousy before and like felt like something was like happening in that sense, and it was like it was halfly true and halfly like kind of weird, where I was like, this is, yeah, this is kind of like I'm not comfortable with this is weird. Since then, like other stuff has happened and like we've kind of worked through that a little bit more, but yeah, I think like that kind of lingers in my head, and I think half of that has to do with just like me personally, and half of that has to do with like the situation that I was just like not comfortable with. But I feel like that's just like, I don't know, it just blows my mind that like there's no jealousy in a relationship. And like I think that that's really, really ideal though, because like jealousy really isn't like super healthy. Like, and I think if you're with somebody that like makes you feel jealous, like first kind of like understand what's up with you, and then maybe like would you also say maybe like there is something that like you might really legitimately be jealous about, and it's not healthy?
I mean, there definitely could be. There's not any, you know, in relationship, but it doesn't mean that there can't be. But again, a lot of it has to do with you needing to kind of work through some of the things that are going on in your life to feel that way. And if there's something that you don't feel good about, then you just need to talk to your partner about that to not have it come up again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So, you know, you could look at it as like we can use the experience that we were just talking about with the example that we were just talking about, is the whole idea of like you being in a relationship with me and you being a couple minutes late. You know, you could compromise and say like, what's going on inside me to feel that triggered by something with you being 2 minutes late. But then we could also talk about the idea of, you know, us come up with some sort of compromise. So there's kind of two different ways of looking at it. But more than anything, it's about like Diana needs to look in herself and look at like what's, or where she feels triggered after 2 minutes that you're not home. There's obviously something from my past happened at some point to make me feel like I did trust, and I feel stupid about that because something happened that caused me to not trust this person anymore. I was lied to or cheated on or, you know, mistreated, let's say, in some way. So it just means that it's something that we need to work through. But more than anything, it's my responsibility to work through it and then talk to you about it. So I think because we're not jealous of each other, what, you know, each other does, we're incredibly open and honest with each other. There's a lot of trust there. It's for a reason. That shows, you know, the work that we've done both and together. It's like it shows, you know, the work that we've done. There isn't any jealousy happening there. I mean, again, I don't think I've ever been. He was a little bit jealous in the beginning of our relationship of some of the guy friends that I had. But he realized he could trust me, and I just have probably more guy friends than girlfriends at this point. But I'd never given him a reason not to trust me. We've been together for over 2 years. So there was a little bit on his part in the beginning, and possibly, I don't know if there's really any jealousy on my part, but I didn't know that I could trust him in the beginning. So, I mean, it really is based on trust. So I don't know if there's ever jealous thing when it came to him, but there was definitely like, I don't know if I can trust this guy. I don't know him. You know what I mean? Like that's the dating part though. Like, can I get to trust him once I know him? You know, and we just are very open and honest with each other. We don't lie, and the relationship shows that. So
I think that that's like 100% the like key to it is like just honestly being super open and like if something like that happens, like I'm a really, really a communicative person. I think that that's like what's really helped me in any relationship I've had is that like I don't just like feel upset and then not talk about it. Like I'll really talk about it. I'll really say like, listen, I know that like I'm feeling upset because of me and like I don't put my emotions on them. And I feel like that approach has helped me. And it wasn't something I started off with. Like past relationships, I would just be jealous and be like, it's all your fault. Like, you know, you knew like you were doing that and that hurt my feelings. And I told you that it would hurt my feelings. But really, like, going deeper and being understanding psychology, honestly, like really studying psychology, neuroscience, and like going deep into that has made me realize like a lot better ways to go about it and a lot better ways to like less stressed out about it. But one big thing that I feel like I get a lot is that people are with somebody who is like crazy maybe, or they feel like they're crazy in certain ways, or like they feel like they're super jealous and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like I feel like they need freaking counseling, but I'm not going to be the one to tell them. Like, what would you recommend for somebody who's in a relationship that's got a spouse or a partner that they feel like is going off the deep end and they want them to get help, but if you say that to your partner, you kind of look like an asshole?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a question that I get a lot, especially with my couple clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very sensitive topic to talk about, obviously,
Yeah.
especially if, let's say, not in therapy or not getting help and the other person, you know, you feel like needs it. I kind of think everyone needs it. We're all fucked up, some more than others, obviously. But I look at it as like we all really need to, you know, have therapy, go to someone who's not you, and talk about your issues in a very like neutral way. But I think the best way to handle something like that is to do it sensitively, where you talk to the person, take it from like a very caring place and share what you're observing and what you see happening, and potentially say, you know, we could either go to, you know, a couples session or two together as well. Like as long as you're being really supportive and maybe sharing, you know, that you would want to go too, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even if your issues are different than mine, I don't want to say worse because I don't think that's fair, but just to say your issues, let's say, are different than mine, then we both go individually. Do you know what I'm saying? It's all about self-improvement. So I look at it as sharing, being able to share and not getting defensive is super important. And that's really with anything. People get incredibly defensive when it comes to anything, and people don't know how to apologize and say they're sorry for something. So a lot of it comes from like humility, you know what I mean? And allowing someone else to say something, as long as they're not being rude about it, where they actually are coming from a really caring place and they know you better than anyone else does. So knowing they know you better, they see you in a way that no one else does. Like your friends and your family know you to a large extent, but they spend the most amount of time with you and are the most invested in this. So to say it very sensitively and to be really kind about it and to offer, you know, any kind of solution that you can. I do that for friends all the time because this is what I do. Some have seen me and some haven't. It depends on what's going on in their lives. Then I help them find someone. So it's like there's nothing wrong with it. I think the stigma is much less than it was. It used to be like, oh, you're crazy, so you need to go to therapy. Now it's just like, I think everyone and anyone should go. You know what I'm saying? It's like being able to be able to like place, and a lot of people don't know the things that you and I know about self-improvement because we're super into it. Like this is our job, but it's also like the way that we live. A lot of people, like I didn't know that before I started, you know, researching and doing this and helping other people do it. So even just like little things I do every day helps me out so much. And I have a coach for pretty much everything in my life now. You know what I mean? Like any issue that I have, I immediately like hire someone because that's what we should be doing. It's not cheap to do that. That's true, but it also pulls you and pushes you as forward as you can in the areas of your life that you're lacking. So just like when something goes wrong in your life, like your sweater rips, you get a new one. If your tire is low, you get it fixed. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just like we do with the actual things in our life, we want to be doing that with ourselves as well and being really proactive. But to kind of bring full circle to answer your question, it's just about being really kind and careful with how you frame it and how you say it. I really believe you can say anything to anyone. It's just how you say it. You know what I mean? To bring your point across and to have them really listen and not get defensive. There's to talk to your partner, and a lot of it is just understanding your partner and knowing how they need to be spoken to, that people don't take the sort of time and energy to do that. So some people like it like direct and just like tell me. Other people, you need a little bit of like, you know, a pillow and like share it with someone. You know, everyone needs told something, you know, in a different way to be able to really receive it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
100%. Like I do this all the time where just to bring it back to like of course personal, it's like yes, I'm the type of person that I'm like, bring it to me with a pillow and like, you know, maybe like some popcorn or just some really kind, like I'm just a really kind person. That's the way that I am too. And I speak to a lot of people in a kind manner. But then, you know, with my boyfriend, it's like I could just be like, I could slap it on him. He's like, I'm fine. Like, it's fine. Just tell it to me straight, you know? And so, how do you, because I actually think that a lot of people go through this. I'm like, he is wonderful because he is so understanding when it comes to that and like has worked through it and sticks to it. Like, I just really couldn't have asked for like somebody that's better in terms of just being like, yeah, like I can hear you out. And like, even if he gets mad, he can come back and just like cool off and say, like, yeah, like here, like let me see it in a better way. And it's just like an amazing way to have a relationship. When you're with somebody though, like what if you feel exhausted? Like how do you get to that point? Like what are some of the things you do daily to like get to that point where like that type of communication is natural and isn't like forced or you feel like you're like, I can do this, you know what I mean?
Sure. So it really depends on what kind of relationship, you know, you have. Are you living together? Are you not living together? But I think for a lot of people, they look at, you know, communication as, you know, what you did that day or like what's new, what's going on, what's happening with your family, your friends, things like that. And while it's super important, of course, you want to talk about that, you really need to be talking about like your relationship and what's going on. And sometimes week to week, you need different type of support because of what's going on in your life. Like, you know, this week for me is like, I actually told you before our, you know, interview, it's just like super stressful this week. So you need different things from your partner at different times. You know, I mean, you're sick, so you need something. You're super stressed out, so you need something. You know, something terrible happened, you need something else. So it's really someone who's like malleable to like your wants and needs, but you need to be able to share. Well, no, but he should just know. It's like, no, no, no. It doesn't work that way. You need to be able to describe and share what it is that you need so that you're able, so they know. And then at that point, if they're still not giving you, then there's a different conversation to be had where it's, why isn't this happening? Why am I not getting what I need? What's going on here? It's a different type of discussion. But I definitely think at least once a week, every couple should be sitting down and really talking about like, how are things going? Like what's going on? Not necessarily couples that have been together for 5 years, but you know, a couple that's, you know, sort of first dating and early on, I think it's really important to sit down and be very honest with each other. And again, as we were saying, kind of with a pillow, but you share with each other like what's going
Yeah.
well, you know, what some improvement, what you need, what's going on, you know, just really checking in with each other so that there aren't any guessing games and you're able to be really honest and clear. I think a lot of us are just not honest about what we want and need, and we're not that happy, but we don't say that we're not happy. So we don't end up getting actually what it is that we want and need. So it's about sharing, being open and honest, talking beyond just about like your day and what happened today and, you know, anything like that, like to get a bit deeper and to go back and forth and to share that together. But I think once a week. And then for a couple that's really like a lot more established, if you're going through a lot, I would say probably every like 2 weeks or so. But for any regular couple, once a month is super important to sit down, talk with each other and have that discussion. I have a very like set way in terms of how I structure that, you know, for my couple clients, but that's, you know, a pretty good answer.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that really kind of like hit every with like if you're in the shit, then kind of like work on it more if you're not, and then like actually talk about it. So I feel like that really gave like everybody an answer for that. So that was really awesome. Um, okay, do you ever deal with like sex with your clients? Or are you like into that sex world, or is that something that you don't really touch?
Yep, I
Okay,
absolutely do. I work with couples, you know, I work
yeah.
with single people. I work with all the time because, you know, I mean, I like to.
Uh-huh.
I kind of find it really fascinating, but I do because, you know, I have to as well. But yeah, totally. It's a
Yeah.
huge part of a relationship.
When it comes to sex, what would you say is like some really important things about sex? Like within a couple, what's some of the things that you're like, okay, like for sure, these are just some things that you guys need to have like hit on and stuff. That sounded weird that way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, no, totally. I think one of the biggest things is frequency. Typically, one partner wants to have it more than the other partner does.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely one piece of it. And I think another is that you don't feel necessarily satisfied, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to share that you feel that way because
Yeah.
it feels awkward and there's ego involved. And it doesn't feel good to hear your partner isn't exactly happy with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also no guessing games. So you do need to share. And just because something worked for someone else doesn't mean it works for you. in terms of like frequency, in terms of where and how and the positions. And, you know, some people like oral sex, some people don't. It's like there's a lot of different sort of wants and needs between different people, and you have to be super honest about it. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you should just know, you know, how to rock my world. Let's go. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That's the movies. That's not real life. So you need to have conversations. And some of what I really like my clients to do, and I've actually done this in my own life, is to really sit down, even sometimes before you are sexual at all, and share like what your wants and needs are, to have in a really like safe space, so that you're not in bed actually like at that time sharing it. It's a little bit of like a, you know what I mean? It's not really time.
Before we do this, just let you know.
Exactly. But like, let's have a talk about it. And I think for, you know, guys and girls, they kind of assume certain things. And, you know, even like guys will say, you know, like a penis is a penis, like it works one way. It's like, no, guys like things really different too. So I think it's really important to share, to have like really open communication of exactly what it is, you know, that you want, you need, what you don't like, you know, what doesn't work for you, what really turns you off, because you don't want to be the person who's in the moment that finds that out. Yeah. So especially when you're really, I mean, that's not going to be a casual encounter that you're going to have this conversation, but, you know, for someone that you're actually dating and wanting a relationship with, it's incredibly important to be open and honest and not have your ego get involved and get very defensive over someone sharing what they do or don't want. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? So to have a conversation ahead of time, so that once the intimacy starts happening, it actually goes the way that you want it to go, and that you're giving live feedback to someone and not getting defensive about it. So someone says like softer, faster, you know, whatever it may be, that it's actually happening. But most people are not talking about it. And even, you know, if you and I are in a relationship, let's say, and, you know, it's too much for me and I'm uncomfortable about it, we need to talk about that. If it's not enough, we need to talk about that, and vice versa. So a lot of it's frequency as well, and obviously come to a compromise, because not every person like in a relationship is going to want the same thing at the exact same time. Right. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to just necessarily always give in, obviously. So because different frequencies, people want that in different times of day, even some people like in the morning, some people like at night. Like you really have to get on the same page and compromise at times, because of course you're not always going to get exactly what you want. But the biggest thing is being really open and honest about what your needs are, what you expect, you know, what you don't like, what really turns you on, and so forth. And vice versa, and, you know, giving that to each other. And in that sort of monthly checkup thing that we were talking about, sharing that, you know, how's it going? Like, what can I do better? What can you do better? Like, are we happy with how things are going? Are we not? Let's talk about this. You know, it's a partnership, and that's a huge part of it. And so, you know, to be able to talk about that is really important. And even just the idea of, you know, let's say a woman's on her period, it's like, what do we do for that week? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much to talk about. And I think people don't, and because it's like scary, it's not sexy to talk about that. And you know what I'm saying? But like, that's just the truth. That's the truth of the matter. You need to be talking about it. And the more you do, and the more you're on, you know, each other's like channels, like you're making sense about what it is that you want sexually, it makes sense, and you're happy. You're both happy. So it's constantly checking in with each other as sort of wants and needs, you know, wax and wane.
Yeah. So then what if you're like in a relationship and like the sex has just like really gone down for one partner? Because I see a lot of times where people are like, I would love to have sex so much more, but they are just not down. And like, you don't want to force your partner. Like, that's just not sexy either, of course. And like, say you've talked about it and stuff too, and like it's been brought up, but like nothing happens. Like, does it go down for a certain reason? Or like, what do people do if they're stuck in that, where they're like, listen, I just feel like I need to have sex more, but my partner just doesn't want to, or vice versa?
Sure. So if we're talking about frequency, is that what we're talking about, frequency, or like being happy with what's happening?
No, frequency, like frequency of like how often, maybe like once a week, twice a week, and they're like, that sucks. Or vice versa, vice versa, of course.
Sure. So a lot of it is just having that conversation about that. So we sit down, we have a conversation, and in that checkup that we're talking about, where it should happen, like if you're first starting, you know, to date a little bit, like it should be probably once a week, then, you know, go down to like twice a month, then once a month. But in those conversations, you really need to be talking about that. And that's exactly, you know, one of the things you want to be talking about is, you know, frequency, its pace, even how long you're doing it. You know, for some people, it's just like, let's, you know, do this, like, you know, I like it kind of like quick and dirty. For other people, it's like, I like doing it for like an hour. Like, it really just depends, but it's about getting on the same page. So let's say I like doing it twice a week and you like 6 times a week. That's very different. So then we meet in the middle and do like 3 or 4, where it's like a little bit more than what I want, but it's a little bit less than what you want, but we're both kind of like happy with us. You want to come up with whatever that compromise is and realize that some weeks it's going to be more than others too. You know what I mean? Based on like what's going on in your life. And, you know, are you guys like away on a tropical vacation where like it's obviously a lot easier? You know, do you have kids? Do you not have kids? How late do you work?
Right.
Are you on the same shifts of like hours? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot to kind of talk through. But generally speaking, it's really about compromise to the point where you're both generally happy, you know what I mean, stretching possibly a bit, but generally speaking, you're both happy with the frequency and, you know, how it's going, how often it's happening, how long it's happening, when it's happening. You know, I mean, there's so many sort of like pieces to it. But like, let's say even like you're a morning person and I'm a night person, you know, then we kind of like split it up, assuming we're having sex like 3 or 4 times a week, maybe like a couple of the times it's in the morning and a couple of times it's at night. It's like, you're not always going to get what you want. You're in a partnership. And so we talk about like what works for me, what works for you, and kind of meet in the middle. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that we're happy with the frequency, when, how long, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I love the way you talk about relationships because I feel like you're so honest about the fact that like relationships take a lot of work. And I think a lot of people are just into that world where they're like, if I'm in a perfect relationship, it's no work, it's easy, like we just flow. And so I just like really appreciate the fact that you're out there and you're like giving it to people real, where it's like you're just gonna have to work at stuff, you know. And so like, you know, I'm a huge fan of you, and I just love all of your work. So I just appreciate the way that like you're putting that stuff out there. I know we are at 2:30, and I wanna, or well, your time is different. I think you're like 5:30 or right, 5:30. Yeah. So I want to respect your time because I know you are super, super crazy. You've got a bunch of people's relationships to fix, and so I want to respect that. So I'm gonna wrap this up. But I just like, I so appreciate you. And like anybody who's in a relationship or like is searching for the one, like as you guys have just seen, she's so amazing at this. This is exactly what she's been doing. She's done like school, she's got her master's and all of this. Like this woman is the real deal. So if anybody's looking for something like that, please check her out. I'm going to put your link in the comments as well, so people can find you if they want to find you or want to hook up with you somehow and like get on the phone or like chit chat. But yeah, is there anything that you want to close off saying, like, if I could put out one message about relationships, like this would be it? Or is there anything you want to kind of leave off saying that you feel like you didn't get the chance to?
I mean, there's so much I could say. I don't shut up about this topic, obviously, but I think one thing is kind of like what you just hit on, like made me think of that I think a lot of people think that relationships are just super easy and they should just work. And it's like, you know, the movies, and it just, you know, is simple. And once you find the right person, that's it. And like, you need to keep the person too. Like you and I were talking about that earlier. It's finding them and keeping them, and to keep them, even if you've been in a relationship for several years, means that there's work. A lot of people say like relationships shouldn't be work. It's like, no, it shouldn't be exhausting, you know, and terrible and, you know, dragging you down. But it is work. It takes compromise and time and energy and sacrifice. So there's a lot involved. There's a lot of elements there. And I think for a lot of people, they don't think that there should be that much involved and invested in it, but it actually is. And so to do that means like having that sit down that we were talking about, checking in with your partner, making sure they're happy in every regard, because that is on you just as much as it is on the other person. So that's your responsibility. It should be a responsibility you want. But it really is a partnership. So I need to make sure that you're happy. You need to make sure that I'm happy, and we're both happy people at that point. So a lot of it is just taking, you know, the time, energy, and the focus, and understanding your partner and what their wants and needs are, and sharing sort of the ebbs and flows of life as you need different things, and being able to really communicate that with each other.
Yeah, no, that was so awesome. That was like the perfect recap too. So thank you so much. You are amazing. And so with that, you guys, like I said, I'm going to put the link in the comments. If you guys want to check her out, she's so amazing. I'm actually going to put the link in all the other videos that we tried as well, just in case anybody saw a little bit. And so, yeah. So anyways, thank you. You are amazing and gorgeous like always. And I really, really appreciate you being on the live right now. I know it was a little bit difficult, but I'm so glad that you stuck in there because this was awesome.
Awesome. Let's do this again. Okay.
For sure. Okay. I'll see you later.
See you later. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.